in our museum, in the room of electrotherapy. You see there the Ruhmkorff coil. Here it is a little spark gap. Here are the high voltage wires and a cold cathode X-ray tube. If you go there, you can push a button and you can see here the spark discharges like this, not so long. Nevertheless, you can produce. You, all the visitors, can see this high voltage discharges. And the induction coil played a role in the discovery of electric waves by Heinrich Hertz. Here is the accumulator and the induction coil like this. And then also in the experiment, in the first experiments of Guglielmo Marconi, that was it. Here is the spark coil and here is the antenna of the Marconi experiment. And up to now, we use the induction coils as ignition coils in the petrol motors. This is a very early motor in the Deutsches Museum in Munich. And here you see an original Ruhmkorff coil as ignition coil of the motor. Now, at the end of the 19th century, electricity was used everywhere. The electric lamps, first of all, the incandescent lamp of Edison, and but there were in the cities only little power stations or a locomotive and a dynamo driven by a steam engine. And in 1882, there was a large-scale experiment in Munich between Miesbach and Munich. The length of a high-voltage transmission line was 57 kilometers, and the voltage, it was a direct current, 1,400 volts. The efficiency was not too good, no more than about 25%. Nevertheless, it proved that it is possible a transmission of electricity for a long distance, but not by DC. Because the maximum voltage of the DC generators was no more than about 1,400, 500 volts. It drove a little water pump, and it was a little artificial water at the Munich exhibition. Then 2 years later, a big demonstration in Torino by the transformer AC system with the so-called secondary generators of Goulart and Gibbs. It was very successful in the street lighting, but there was a problem because the secondary generators were serial, so the lamps couldn't be switched off or on independently. In a street lighting it makes no problem, but in a home or in an office it is not available. And finally, in the next year, 1885, solved the problem. The three engineers of the Hungarian firm Ganz, Stipanovsky, Deni, Blati, by the parallel switch, by the parallel distribution, by transformers, and a copy of the very first shell-type transformers is exhibited here in the museum. You can see it here. And after it, the AC systems were accepted, and the Ganz and the engineers, or the Italian engineers, built up in those years the biggest power plant in the continent. It was in Rome, and its capacity was 2,400 kilowatts, driven by steam engines. And 1892, the first high voltage transmission line between Tivoli and Rome. The voltage was not so high, 5,000 volts, and here are the transformers in Rome at the Porta Pia. It was the transformer station. And before it was a very successful experiment in Frankfurt am Main. It was not only a AC but a three-phase, a multi-phase energy transport between Laufen and Frankfurt. In Laufen there was a water power plant, and the length of the line was 175 kilometers, and the voltage 3 times 15 kilowatts, and the big 100 horsepower motor drove a pump and supplied, but not such a little as 9 years before it in Munich, but a big artificial water. 20 years ago it was celebrated in Frankfurt am Main. We were there together with Mr. Heilbronner, and as I remember, the mayor of the town opened the exhibition, and it was reconstructed, and he pushed the button and then happened nothing. And because the power system was not evacuated, so we stand there in a sparkling in our hand, and we waited a few minutes, and finally, 100 years before, there was no problem. 100 years later, we had to wait a few minutes for it. And back to Italy, it was very successful. The first long-distance electrification of the Valtellina line near the Lake Como. It is also a cooperation between the Hungarian and the Italian engineers. It was a three-phase system. One of the phases was the trail, and here were two contacts and two overhead wires. That was the cargo locomotive. Now this locomotive is exhibited in the Leonardo Museum in Munich. And here are the memorial tables. Sorry, the solution of it is not the best. Let me read it, the Italian text. Alla memoria dell'ingegnere ungherese Kaunan Kondo, che in collaborazione con la Vita Gas di Budapest e la Ferrovie Italiane per primo al mondo progettò e costruì nel lontano 1902 la prima linea elettrica trifase alta tensione da Lecco a Sondrio e da Colico a Chiavenna. And finally, a number of people were afraid because of the high voltage, and 12 years ago I visited the rest of the power plant of the Valtellina line in Morbegno, and I found there this table, non toccare i fili pericolo di morte. Of course, nowadays we have a good protection against the high voltage, and there was developed since the first experiment with the lightnings up to the high voltage technology of nowadays. Thanks for your attention.